This is January 5th, 2015. This is the second video clip that I'm making this morning. So I was just talking about Edward Howard, which is sort of a tangent off of Bechtold's, but kind of goes along with the government stuff and CIA. And actually, you know, I really feel that for me, maybe it was more CIA earlier on in my life, but for myself, definitely took a drastic FBI turn. And I really think that the FBI is very guilty for a lot of things that have happened to me. And they were using their own men. So I remember being in their offices far more frequently than I was in CIA offices. Especially when I was like middle school age and that kind of thing. Now it's possible that they had me on their list of someone that they wanted to use for something, and then they dumped me and then threw me over to the military or the FBI or something. I don't know. But that's how it was. So anyway, with Edward Howard, they one time kind of seemed like he was for some sort of funding for me, and then they said, you think she, and they were saying something like, do you think she should be queen? Okay, they were talking about things about like who should be Queen of England, like after Elizabeth, after Anne or whatever, and Charles and so on. I'm not quite sure which person or how they thought they could get me into a situation where I would become queen. But I was given some etiquette and training, actually, when I was very young. And then I guess when someone decided to scrap the plan, they did some really bad things to me. Because then it was like everything that they'd done, they wanted to undo. So Edward acted like he was kind of for me in some sense. And then they had me do this henna. It was like a little paintbrush, like for watercolors or whatever. And just trace a couple of marks on his face, and I don't think that I knew that there was acid in it that burned his skin. I thought I was just painting his face, like circus or fairground painting. At least I think that's what I thought, because I don't remember thinking that I was torturing him. But then they were saying that that's what it was later, and then I saw that his I thought maybe it was just because it was degrading, you know, like if I'm painting whiskers on his face or some kind of design, maybe he felt like insulted. And maybe it was more than that, but I don't remember thinking that I was hurting him. And anyway, and he didn't act like he was being hurt, although he did have a tear come down from his eye. And so after that, they said to him, so do you think you still think she should be queen or get the funding? I don't remember which one of the two they said. But he said, okay, fine. And so he was then going along with the idea that Katie Middleton should get some kind of sponsorship. So, so then it was either after that or before that. It might have been after that. He was at my house in Moses Lake, Washington. Really didn't act like he liked me at all. And he had a gun with him and some other people, and they were making demands about money going to Katie Middleton. So it took a much more hardcore kind of a turn there, where I thought, you know, wow, they're definitely wanting to get something going with this Katie Middleton person. So, you know, by that time, Katie Middleton, I was 7 years old when she was born. So when he took off, when Edward left the United States, I was about 9 years old. So it wasn't very long after that. And I was 8 or 9, something like that. So in the midst of all of this all of these things that were going on, and when he was sitting at his bed and waiting to see what my response was, he had me drink red wine first. And then I was a little kid, and after he had me drink red wine, he did a couple of the same trigger cues that the other government people did. And so I started to think that I had to give him a blowjob, and I was about to do it. And then he stopped me and he said, "Oh, so that's what you think is next." And so he knew that the government was raping me and forcing me to do that kind of thing with men, government employees specifically, and that they were giving them instructions on how to get me to do certain things. And so for whatever reason, they used red wine a lot to try to, well, they used different forms of liquor. There were hard liquors and red wine and a few other things. They did just about everything, or they tried just about everything to incorporate more of a weakened response in me. I mean, you know, when I was a kid, I think that they thought that the more they did that to me when I was a kid, in combination with torturing me and threatening me and that kind of thing, they could get the response that they wanted. So make me as vulnerable as they wanted me to be, and when I was older even. So anyway, these different men would get into a car and take me out and force me to do blowjobs. You know, one of them sitting there, the other one not, or driving. And sometimes they'd pull over and I'd have to do that for the one that was driving while his friend sat on the other side. And other times I was sitting in between them on the front seat, and they made me put my hand on both of their penises while they were sitting, so that I was in the center of the car seat, with one hand on one guy over to my right and the other to the left. And when I said that I was electrocuted when I got home sometimes, I think I've already kind of explained what that was about. But other things that happened when I mentioned I got attacked sometimes in the car, some of the forms of attack would be cutting me with like a razor. Other times would be taking a cigarette burner and burning me, like one of those cigarette lighters that's in a car. He'd burn me in like a thigh or a spot where not everybody would see. And one time I was penetrated, either I think it was vaginally, with some sort of an object. And it was sudden and very violent. And I had a gun to my head at the same time. And that was, all of those different things were for refusing to do the blowjob with the triggers that they had lined up. Or codes and cues, I guess, not triggers exactly. But then they had some other people get into the car, and, well, for example, like Dennis Hotchkiss and Paul Castle were one of the duos, and the government used them to kidnap my son from me, Oliver, who is now in Dryden, Washington, and being abused, and has been abused ever since he's been away from me. And the government used some of those same men, to commit crimes against me, and then use them in their positions of judge and lawyer to lie about me, so that the government could get more kids sucked into their really disgusting programs that they basically had just set up for their own personal satisfaction. And there were a number of different duos of different men. And another one that was sort of, I have a list actually, but one that I've always thought was kind of strange was Wendell Wagler and his son Will Wagler. And well, Will was in the background, in the back seat or something like that, maybe. But his dad was like a pastor. And then, and I thought friends of the family. And then he was with another guy that, like, from the church or whatever, or his church back then. And I don't specifically, I remember getting threatened and being forced to do something, but I'm not 100% sure that I actually did anything for Wendell Wagler, but I definitely could have. I may have. He was in the car when something was happening. And then what was really strange is that later, when I was about 13 years old and started going to this private Christian school in Moses Lake, Washington, Will Wagler was there. And I saw Will sometimes on this base, what they call it the base. It was a military base in an old military base in Moses Lake, Washington, but it had a bunch of the current military people there too. And I would see him sometimes, and I saw him sometimes at church, in different churches, and he got piano lessons from, I think, Harriet West, and I knew who she was. And so at some point, I was going to this Christian school, and I had a crush on him, and he had me go into his car with him. And he was driving then, so he was probably 15, at least had some kind of a permit or something. And I sat on the passenger side, and he had socks there on the floor. Like the same government thing. And when I saw those athletic socks on the floorboard of that car, in Will Wagler's car, I just kind of froze up, because I was sitting there chatting and thought I was getting alone time with Will Wagler finally, who always put me off and was kind of sarcastic to me. And so I thought, oh, well, he wants to talk to me. But, then I saw those socks down there on the floorboard and just froze up and got scared. And the thing is with the triggers he was using, I had the impulse and reaction response to do what they wanted me to do. But the only reason I didn't do it is because there were people around. So, we were in this parking lot for the school. And that was something that I'd also been coached not to do, is like, if there were people around, then I was not supposed to do the blowjob thing with these government people. And, so I just sat there kind of frozen, and I remember I started having a panic attack. I was trying to breathe and trying to conceal the fact that I was having a hard time breathing. I remember Casey Gorsuch across from us out in the schoolyard staring over at us and kind of smirking. And I thought, well, I really don't know what's going on, but it seems like he knows what's going on. He was a friend of Will Wagler's. And then Will said something like, "It's your mom." And I've never been sure, some of these cryptic comments people have made to me. What does he mean, "it's your mom"? But that's what he said. And the fact was that I was in junior high, but it was the first time that someone close to my age indicated they knew about what some of these older men were doing to me, or had done to me.